Okay, great. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Um, Recycled Water Committee meeting, Thursday, March 19th. So, Chai, roll call, please.
Pacific Grove, Veranda,
Here.
Castroville,
Here.
Marina Coast,
Here.
Monterey. We have a quorum.
Great, thank you. I would like to ask for any additions to the agenda.
There are no additions.
Great, thank you, Tammy. How about an approval of the agenda? Move approval.
Second.
Great, thank you. I'd like to, at this time, like to ask.
Well, he can ask for public comment if he wishes. Oh, okay. Go ahead.
No, no, because I was going to move on to public comments too. Chai, can we have roll call, please?
Veranda,
Yes.
Castroville,
Yes.
Marina Coast.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Great. Moving on to 5, public comments. Anyone wishing to address the committee on matters not appearing on the agenda may do so now. Comments on any other matter listed on the agenda are welcome at this time is being considered by the committee.
I don't see any raised.
Okay, great. Moving on to 6A, consider approval of recycled water committee minutes of February 12th, 2026.
Move approval. Second.
Great. Thank you. Roll call, Chai?
Veranda,
Yes.
Castroville,
Yes.
Marina Coast.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Great. Moving on to 6B, consider recommending the authorization or authorizing participation in the Omnia Partners Cooperative Purchasing Program contract number 201-8011-02, approval of a SaaS services agreement with Mentor APM. And I'm going to let Rich go ahead and
All right.
spit the
Thank you,
rest
Chair and
out.
committee members.
Yep.
I'm Frank Rich, your Director of IS for Monterey One Water. This project is to replace our current computer maintenance management system, or CMMS, which has been in use since 2017. With the estimated project schedule, we should realize a full 10 years utilization of our current CMMS, which is about the average lifespan for an implementation. M1W staff began evaluations of different CMMS platforms in January of 2025 to identify a platform that would meet both current and future needs of the organization. We evaluated 10 platforms total, and we had 5 vendors who were the highest selected to provide detailed demonstrations. Following those demonstrations, Mentor APM emerged as the highest performing vendor. To validate that selection, we initiated a pilot project in November of 2025, which allowed staff the opportunity to test the platform in a real-world environment. Pilot project was successful and confirmed that Mentor APM met our maintenance and asset management requirements. Some of the areas that really set this platform apart are its work management and scheduling, the mobile solution, risk and criticality analysis, and AI-enhanced asset condition management. In addition, the platform will integrate with our new ERP system in several areas, and time tracking is probably going to be the most beneficial to staff for that integration. This project also includes professional services to implement the system according to industry best practices. The total cost for the 5-year project is implementation fees of $150,000, recurring annual fees of $400,535 over the 5-year span, and a 10% contingency of $55,054 for a total 5-year cost not to exceed $605,589. All costs associated with this project have been budgeted as part of Project 370 CP, the CMMS upgrade replacement project. Staff is recommending or is asking that the Recycled Water Committee recommend that the board approve participation in the Omnia Partners Purchasing Program contract 2018011-02 and authorize the executive officer or their designee to enter into a SaaS services agreement with Mentor APM for the implementation and licensing of an asset performance management platform for the CMMS upgrade and replacement project in the not to exceed amount of $605,589. Staff is available to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you, Frank. Go ahead.
So you mentioned that this system will incorporate better time tracking. Is that time tracking for all employees and all their activities, or just for the maintenance side of things?
This is primarily going to be for the maintenance side so that they have the opportunity to enter the time in one system one time. Right, currently we don't have an integration, so they have to track their time in multiple systems, which is very time consuming for them.
If we get to a point where all staff are tracking their time, at least against our main fund site funds, will this integrate with that sort of process?
So this is just if they are working within the CMMS, which is primarily work orders, preventative or emergency work orders, they'll track it in there and then it goes into our regular time system. So we'll have a centralized time system that is part of our payroll system, which generates our paychecks.
Okay, thank you very much.
Great. Any more questions, comments? Chai, is there any public comments?
I don't see any raised hands from the public.
Great. May I entertain a motion?
Yeah, I'll move approval.
Second.
Great. First, second. Chai, roll call.
Baranda,
Yes.
Castroville,
Yes.
Marina Coast.
Yes.
Carries unanimously.
Great. Let's move on to item 6C. Consider recommending approval of a construction contract with GEMS Environmental for the CIP 371 Castroville Pump Station Diesel Above Ground Storage Tank Project in the not to exceed amount of $294,869.48. And Mr. Harris, you're up.
Good afternoon, Chairman Abino and members of the committee. My name is Darrell Harris, Utilities and Maintenance Manager. The Castroville Pump Station was built in the early 1980s, pumps wastewater from the Castroville community area to the regional treatment plant. It includes an above-ground storage tank to provide fuel storage for an on-site generator used for emergencies when commercial power is unavailable. Staff identified corrosion and deterioration of the outer shell of the tank and subsequently performed an ultrasonic inspection to measure wall thickness and determine metal loss. Based on information obtained, it was determined that the AST, or above ground storage tank, was at the end of its useful life and needed to be replaced. Bid documents were developed for construction contract project CIP 371 Castroville Pump Station Diesel AST project, which includes removing and disposing of the existing AST and installing a double wall 1,000-gallon AST with associated piping. Instrumentation and containment. A pre-bid meeting was held on February 12, 2026, with one interested contractor in attendance. On March 3rd, 2026, one bid was received from GEMS Environmental for a total project cost of $294,869.48. This project will be funded by a budget transfer from Department 32, Maintenance, Field Maintenance, Outside Contractor Budget line item. Staff recommends that the Recycle Water Committee recommend that the board award a contract to GEMS Environmental for the Castroville Diesel Above Ground Storage Tank Project in the not to exceed amount of $294,869.48 and recommend approval of a budget transfer in the not to exceed amount of $294,869.48. And I would be happy to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you, Darrell. Any questions, comments? Mr. Moore.
Yeah, in the event of a power loss with a 1,000-gallon diesel tank like this, how long will it last before we run out of that fuel?
So at that station, we have a belly tank of 250 gallons plus the 1,000 gallons. So we get probably about 4 days of runtime on that tank.
Okay. And should we consider increasing the size of any of these storage tanks?
For that station there, that That's a pretty substantial size for the flow that we have going to that station. We are doing another project on the Seaside pump station where it's a much bigger tank
Okay.
and putting a new tank in at that station as well as part of that project upgrade.
All right. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any questions? Like to entertain? Oh, actually, public comments?
I don't see any raised hands from the public.
Great, thanks, Chai. Entertain a motion.
Move approval.
Second. Great, thank you. Roll call, please, Chai.
Baronda,
Yes?
Castroville,
Yes.
Marina Coast.
Yes.
Carries unanimously.
Great. Thank you, Chai. Agenda item 6D. Consider recommending approval of a memorandum of agreement with the city of Salinas to provide pretreatment and water quality monitoring services and operation and maintenance for the city of Salinas Industrial Wastewater Treatment Facility. And Sarah Stevens.
Afternoon, Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Sarah Stevens. I'm the Environmental and Regulatory Compliance Supervisor for Monterey One Water. The City of Salinas owns and operates a separate industrial wastewater collection system that conveys industrial wastewater to the city's Industrial Wastewater Treatment Facility, which is regulated by the Regional Water Board under General Waste Discharge Requirements, Order Number 2004-66. As part of this order, the city must implement a pretreatment program to regulate discharges to the Industrial Wastewater Treatment Facility. The City of Salinas contracts Monterey One Water Source Control Division to provide industrial pretreatment services to assist with compliance with this order, and the existing memorandum of agreement is now outdated. Therefore, in collaboration with the city, staff updated the MOA to authorize staff to continue to provide support with water quality sampling, inspections at the city's industrial dischargers, as well as billing services. The revised MOA is currently undergoing final non-substantive edits. However, the final MOA will be brought before the board at the March 30th meeting for consideration. Staff therefore requests that the Recycled Water Committee recommend that the Board of Directors approve the MOA with the City of Salinas to provide pretreatment and water quality monitoring services and operations and maintenance at the City of Salinas Industrial Wastewater Treatment Facility and authorize the Executive Officer to sign the MOA to include any non-substantive edits. With that, I would be happy to answer any questions.
Great. Ron?
Thank you, sir. How long have we been doing this service?
So this particular service we've been providing to the city since 2018. Prior to that, we were providing fog, fats, oil and grease, and stormwater inspection services for the city since 2001.
Mr. Moore?
So I wanted to make sure that we all had a copy of the existing agreement, or now expired, I guess, or extended temporarily. Can you point out where in this agreement some changes are contemplated?
So the agreement is substantially the same. It's the same scope of work. The major difference that will be noted is the separation of the scopes of work. So in the existing MOA that we're currently providing services, we contemplated providing additional operations and maintenance services for compliance with the general order that we currently are not providing. So as part of this upgrade, we went ahead and separated into Exhibit B, which is the current scope of work that we're providing, as well as you'll note a new Exhibit C that enables the city to call upon Monterey One Water to provide those support services if needed. However, makes it clear the current and the potential scope of services. So that is the primary upgrade or update as part of this revised MOA.
Okay, and that's marked in yellow highlights within Exhibit B.
Yes, Exhibit B, the highlights are the current language that we are working with the City of Salinas to finalize before bringing the final MOA to the March board hearing. And H is a new provision that was added to essentially enable the City of Salinas to call upon that Exhibit C more clearly and then clarify those required monitoring timeframes, because some of the services that we contemplate providing but are not currently are on a quarterly schedule. So there is a new note to the table that's provided as part of 3A.
And then Exhibit C in its entirety is new.
So no, it was previously it was compiled with Exhibit B. So it's not new in its entirety. It's just segregating it into its own separate exhibit.
Separated out. Okay. And what, if any, final changes do you anticipate negotiating with the city of Salinas prior to the March board meeting?
The only changes we're currently anticipating are to the two highlighted sections that you pointed out.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Chai, any public comment?
See any raised hands.
Great, thank you.
Second.
Chai, may we have a roll call, please?
Rhonda,
Yes?
Castroville,
Yes.
Marina Coast.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Great. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 6E. Consider recommending approval of an amendment to the outfall capacity negotiation, cooperation, and funding agreement between Monterey One Water and California American Water Company. And Mr. Shudo?
Thank you, Chair Habino. Can you hear me okay? I'm assuming
Yes.
we're good? Okay.
Yep.
So as we talked about last month, we have that existing negotiation reimbursement agreement with Cal-Am that was signed back in September 29th in 2023. We have gone through an amendment, so this current agreement extends through September 27th, 2027. As part of the agreement, we, Monterey One Water, agreed to submit a coastal development permit application on behalf of Cal-Am for our outfall. As you well know, there are improvements to the outfall that need to be made prior to any other discharge of brine, et cetera, goes through it. I believe I mentioned this last month, is that I didn't think it was in our best interest to have a co-applicant on a permit for the agency's assets. So in the last month, we have talked with Cal-Am a number of times, and Jim and their attorney, DJ Moore, have gone back and forth on wording. What this item is an amendment to the agreement that removes the co-applicant requirement that Cal-Am was open to upon request, but does provide some more prescriptive details on what Monterey One Water will do in this process in terms of getting information to Cal-Am, making sure they're involved in the process and so on. So what we would like to have the committee do is recommend to the board to approve this. And then the subsequent item, which you'll hear about on the coastal development permit application, it will reflect Monterey One Water as the sole applicant. I think we've sort of hit that middle point of making sure all parties feel their interests are served and we can move forward. I would like Jim to expand a little bit on some of the details and the issues identified in that amendment, if possible.
Great. Mr. Jim, are you there?
Thank you, Chair. So the amendment includes three sections which are changed. Section 6.02 has been amended to eliminate the co-applicant language. And so Monterey One will be submitting, assuming you approve them submitting it, the application as a sole applicant. Sections 6.07 and 6.08 were added to clarify the roles of the parties. First, in 607, following the submission of the CDP application, essentially replicating what's already in the agreement, that we would use commercially reasonable efforts to work with Cal-Am in terms of processing the permit and responding to the Coastal Commission. As I mentioned, 6.08 is also a new section, and it calls out for the parties' mutual intent to enter into a definitive agreement relative to compliance if and when a coastal development permit is issued. This is simply intended to deal with addressing indemnification obligations. So in the permit, as the sole applicant, those conditions will apply to M1W, and we would prepare as part of an agreement the pass-through or joint obligation for Cal-Am to indemnify and cover M1W relative to any obligations that are placed in that CDP amendment. Those are the proposed amendments to the agreement. I'm happy to answer any questions.
I think we're going to have some questions or comments. Oh, Director Moore?
Yeah, but I think I'd like to hear from the public first, if that's okay with my fellow committee members.
Chair Habino, if I may, I also wanted to point out that you did receive correspondence from the public as well on this particular item from Bill Leip. You should have that, and certainly whether it's discussion or going to the public, whatever you prefer, I just want to make sure you're aware that that is there.
Great. Chai, do you want to go ahead and discuss or announce the two public comments?
Yes.
By
so we
letter.
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
We received correspondence from Bill Leip on items 6E and 6F, and everyone got a copy of the letter, and we also published on the agenda packet. And then we received a letter from the City of Marina related to item 6F.
Great. Thank you. So at this time, we're going to entertain public comments.
We can toggle back and forth from people who are here in the public and then online.
Great. We're going to ask to keep the comments no more than 3 minutes. Thank you.
Yes, Howard Wilkins, Remy Moose and Manley speaking, representing Marina Coast Water District here. I'll hold most of my comments for the next item, but for this particular item, I'd like to note that in the proposed edition, section 607, it says in Roman small 3, include Cal-Am in any negotiations with the Coastal Commission staff concerning the content of any proposed special conditions, and shall not agree to any special conditions without Cal-Am's consent. And I would note that special conditions under the Coastal Act and the Coastal Commission's review are very similar to mitigation measures under CEQA, and to basically allow Cal-Am unilateral control over what mitigations M1 Water is willing to agree to would be wholly inappropriate, in my view, under both the Coastal Act and CEQA. You need to maintain that it's your project, it's your outfall, and you should not be foreclosing mitigation or alternatives by saying that Cal-Am can refuse to agree to them and that you will abide by whatever Cal-Am says. So with that, I'll hold the rest of my comments for the larger next item.
Great. Thank you.
Good afternoon, committee members. DJ Moore, outside counsel for California American Water. Actually, for a side point, I'm here this afternoon with Cal-Am's new engineering manager for the Central Division, David Bizzini. Given that other components of Cal-Am's desal project are moving forward towards construction, Tim O'Halloran, whom you all know very well, is moving on and transitioning to a full-time project manager role related to development. So you'll be seeing a lot more of David in the project going forward. I just wanted to echo Cal-Am's support for the amendments. We worked very closely with your staff on the contents of those amendments. Regarding the comment about Cal-Am having unilateral approval authority, that the rationale for the language that is in there is that obviously M1W is going to want Cal-Am to reimburse it for any of the costs associated with compliance with special conditions. And if there are special conditions that would render the project infeasible in some manner that are proposed, or if there are special conditions that Cal-Am would have comments on that, might make the project more workable. And again, these are things that we don't know. We're so far from this process before the Coastal Commission. Cal-Am should have an opportunity to say, we're walking away from the project. We can't accept that as opposed to M1W agreeing to a condition and then, expecting CalAm to pay for it. And again, we don't know what the contents of those conditions might be, but this is all related to desalination brine. It's not other modifications to the outfall for other purposes, right? This is solely related to the CalAm project. If the parties had been co-applicants, obviously they would have had to have agreed to the contents of conditions before they proceeded. And so that's the genesis of that language. And of course, I'm sure you can ask your counsel as well for how we arrived at that language, but that's the basis for it. And I hope that explanation helps. But thank you very much. We remain very supportive of the item.
Great. Thank you. Any other public comments?
Sure. Good afternoon, Chair Habino, members of the committee, staff, and public. This is again connected to that, and thank you for that. I think that it's important to recognize that this isn't something that we as a city or we as special districts would yield. This is essentially giving away the authority of our board in the decision-making process. We're talking about letting CalAm be a part of because we are a collective, our permit making. We're letting CalAm have a voice inside of our permit and having a voice in terms of whether or not we're going to move forward. And I think that that's a problem, right? This permit belongs to Monterey One Water. We are all members of that. And I don't think that I can say for Marina Coast, but I can also imagine that for the cities and for the Castroville, we wouldn't agree to these terms with a developer. Why would we agree to these terms with CalAm? We're letting them inside of our permit and we're letting them inside of our project. The outfall is the single most important piece of infrastructure that we have. We can replace all parts of the plant. That outfall is key to everything. And so letting a private entity act inside of our permit process, I think, is fraught with error. So I would recommend that the committee reject this language and direct the management team to go back to CalAm and remove the co-applicant and come up with a quid pro quo that works for us and protects our asset and protects the agency as a whole. Thank you.
Great. Any other public comment? Chai, anybody online?
Don't see any remote public comments.
Director Williamson, you showed up a little late. Do you have any comments, questions?
No, and I probably don't think it's appropriate for me to vote on it since the debate has occurred since before I got here. But I can jump in on the next one. I mean, I would almost ask for a recap, but I don't want to stop the flow of it. So I apologize for my late arrival here.
Okay. Go ahead.
So I guess I'll direct these questions to Mr. Gilpin for some clarification. And by way of background, if you wouldn't mind, can you confirm whether Monterey One Water's Board of Directors has held any closed session discussions from which a member of the Monterey One Water Board of Directors has been excluded? Has that ever happened?
I'm not sure how that's germane to the item on the agenda.
If you wouldn't mind answering the question, though, I'll try and make it germane here in a moment.
During what period of time are you talking about, Director Moore?
Last 3 or 4 years.
Yes, and to my knowledge, directors have been excluded from closed sessions within the last 3 years, yes.
So just for example, when we were in negotiations with the County Water Resources Agency, Director Church, as a county supervisor, was excluded from closed session discussions about those negotiations. Is that correct?
Well, I guess I'd encourage you not to disclose information that you learn in closed session. I don't
Well, of
believe
course
the
not.
topic of the closed session has been publicly disclosed, Director Moore. So I'm not going to reflect comments regarding instructions given during the closed session regarding the subject matter of that closed session, which were not discussed.
Yeah, and I'm not asking you to do so. I'm just asking whether Director Church was excluded.
Director Church has been excluded from closed session items.
So here's some issues I have with the language, in particular in section 6.07 as proposed in this revision. It appears to me that the proposed revision would require Monterey One Water to disclose closed session information to Cal-Am regarding negotiations with the California Coastal Commission and information regarding any Monterey One Water Board of Directors closed session discussions about litigation that could potentially be filed regarding the related CDP application. Cal-Am is not even a member of this agency or its board of directors. They are a customer. Do we routinely give out closed session information to our customers? Believe not. Our biggest single customer is the Monterey County Water Resources Agency, and we excluded their member from closed session discussions when we were negotiating with them. So we don't let our customers tell us how to respond to information requests we get from other state agencies. And I don't believe we allow customers to tell us whether or not we can agree to requirements imposed by an agency of the state of California. So I guess my question to you is, would you, in light of that information, still advise us to approve this language in section 6.07?
Well, fundamentally, I don't agree with your proposed interpretation of how this would be applied. Cal-Am would never be allowed in a closed session relative to potential litigation against it. I'm not sure what your grounds for including negotiation over this agreement would be in closed session. But the context of this condition is that Cal-Am wants to be part of M1W's negotiations with the Coastal Commission, who would be imposing the special conditions. And I think as reflected, we're pursuing this permit application for Cal-Am's desal project. And if Cal-Am's unwilling to accept the conditions imposed by the Coastal Commission, we would not proceed with the Coastal Development Permit Amendment. The negotiations are with the Coastal Commission, not with M1W. So it's much different than the situations that Mr. Schlesinger or his counsel have pointed out where a developer has come to negotiate conditions with a city or entity. So I don't agree with your interpretation. I don't think that's how this would be applied and or interpreted.
So if we were sued over this coastal development permit and our board of directors held a closed session to discuss our response to that litigation, we would be presumably unable to disclose any information either from a member of our board of directors or through staff to disclose any information from that closed session to Cal-Am. So how would that not violate the provision that says we're to include Cal-Am in any negotiations with the Coastal Commission staff?
Well, I don't see where it talks about us being in closed session for negotiations with the Coastal Commission staff. Your hypothetical said if the application had been issued, meaning negotiations have been completed, conditions have been imposed, and M1W has been sued relative to that coastal development permit in the example you provided. It's not even applicable to these terms.
Yeah, I'm not being an attorney. I don't know when people could sue us, whether that's before or after a coastal development permit has been issued, whether it's about process. Obviously, I
put
have.
it this way: if anyone sued us, there's nothing in this agreement that requires us to allow Cal-Am to participate in a closed session of the M1W board, and that would not happen.
Well, I'm not saying we'd allow them to participate in the closed session. I'm talking about information developed in a closed session that they did not participate in, but then subsequently under this agreement needs to be disclosed to them.
Direct the general manager to do that by consensus in closed session, like we always do.
Yeah, plus, I'm not seeing where this would direct us to disclose any information to Cal-Am coming out of a closed session. This merely states that we will consult with them regarding negotiations with the Coastal Commission and obtain their consent before agreeing to any special conditions imposed by the Coastal Commission in a CDP.
Right. Well, obviously, we somewhat disagree. Let me ask another question, though, about the indemnification issue. Towards the end of the indemnification provisions, there is an indication that should we be sued, if I understand it correctly, should we be sued, and the courts find that it was our fault, that Cal-Am can recover from us costs, presumably all costs, that they've expended trying to defend us. Is that a correct interpretation of that provision?
I have not analyzed it. I'm happy to submit a memo to the M1W board with my analysis of the indemnification provision, but I'm not prepared to have a legal discussion with you in open session, potentially waiving attorney-client privilege relative to the interpretation of an agreement.
Okay, fair enough. All right, thank you.
Director Moore, would you like us to pursue that sort of legal memo to go to the board, right? Or would the committee like us to do that?
Yeah, that's where the committee would like that's a more appropriate question. I agree.
Yeah.
And it seems to me, while we're in the process of, if you will, renegotiating or at least discussing with Cal-Am some revisions to this, if that turns out to be a serious risk from the perspective of the board, then it seems like we ought to know about it.
Great. Thank you, Director Moore. Paul, did you have anything else?
No, just if the committee would like us to move forward with that, and or we can just ask the board next month as well, or next meeting as well. But item will be hopefully be considered next meeting. Just want to make sure that we are prepared as staff to provide you the information necessary.
Great. Well, this recommendation, this will be going to our next
Board meeting.
Board meeting, correct?
Yes, it will.
So I think we can entertain a motion right now.
Well, I don't know if I'll get a second, but I'd be happy to move that we ask for staff to clarify the indemnification issue and bring this back to the committee next month.
Yeah. Okay. So the original recommendation to recommend the board of directors approve and authorize the general manager to execute the proposed amendment of the outfall capacity negotiation. We're going to recommend that to the board of directors, in which we will have a discussion and vote on then.
So I'll make that motion. Alternate motion is.
I'll second that.
Okay.
I'm not going to vote. Just because I wasn't, and I think this is a provision in the Brown Act. If you're not present during the entire discussion, then you're not allowed to vote. So I'm going to stay out of this one.
Okay. Chai, roll call.
Veranda,
Yes.
Castroville,
Yes.
Marina Coast.
No.
Motion carries 2-1.
Just a curious point of order. We still have 4 members present during the vote, 1 who effectively abstained. And if that's the case, then you do not have a majority approval of the motion.
If he abstains, he goes with the majority. Any abstentions go with the majority. That's the way I understand it.
That's not my understanding. And we have Mr. Gilpin online who can inform us what the truth is.
Yeah, I want clarification as whether Mr. Williams is being showing absent for this item or as an abstention.
Is that a question for me?
Jim, can you repeat that? I don't think Tyler understood that.
Well, I'm trying to understand what he was saying. He hadn't arrived for the item and whether he's declaring himself as absent for this item or as an abstention on the item. Alternatively, I'd suggest that he go ahead and vote on the item.
I'm reflecting on this with my experience with the city, and our city attorney is very clear in that if you're not present during the item being discussed, then you're not purview to all the information to be able to vote on the item. So however that appropriate gets classified, I don't know.
So I think the question is, and maybe this is for Jim and or Tyler was not present for the discussion, so that is that in essence absent, or being that he showed up midpoint, would he then abstain from the vote even though he only heard half of it? Is there?
Well, the abstention is not counted as part of the vote. The issue is he's now part of the, you now have a quorum of 4 people. 2 yeses, 3 ones. I believe it passes anyway, but he's not shown as a no vote. So he's shown his vote.
2-1-1.
Yes, 2-1-1. It would carry forward.
Okay. Final answer.
Final answer. Apologies for making this so complicated for you all.
Okay, so can we move on now? Okay. Great. Agenda item 6F, consider recommending authorization to submit a coastal development permit amendment application for modifications to Monterey One Water outfall to the California Coastal Commission related to the Monterey Peninsula Water Supply Project. And Mr. Thompson, you're up.
Chair Habino, if I may, I'd like to just do a brief overview before kicking out to Matt for the CDP application itself. This is another one I believe the board is familiar with. We have discussed it. We delayed it a month. I wanted to reflect because I don't think it is stated in the staff report, but you do have the letter from the city of Marina that we, staff, Matt, Jim, myself, had the opportunity to meet with Marina Coast Water District and their attorneys, City of Marina and their attorneys, and had some correspondence going back and forth. In my understanding of those meetings and discussions with Lane Long, city manager at the City of Marina, is we certainly have a disagreement on the jurisdiction issue surrounding the CDP application itself. And I think the City of Marina has done a good job in their letter identifying why they think it should go to the City of Marina. Our discussions with Coastal Commission staff and attorney, as well as BB&K's legal memo, we felt going to the Coastal Commission was appropriate. However, I definitely want to represent that we did not have consensus on that. The City of Marina has a different perspective with their local coastal program. Not sure if you've had the opportunity to read their letter yet, but their arguments are fairly well defined. I did talk to Lane today, and he mentioned waiting to hear back from the Coastal Commission, and hopefully before the end of the month would have something in writing beyond that letter after their discussions with Coastal. So I just want to provide that as a backdrop before we go into the discussion on the CDP itself and process. So, Matt.
All right. Good afternoon, committee members. I'm your Director of Engineering, Matt Thompson. I'm here today with a recommendation to move ahead with submitting an application to the California Coastal Commission for improvements to the Monterey One Water ocean outfall. The improvements are needed to accommodate brine discharge from the seawater desalination facility that is a major part of California American Water Company's Monterey Peninsula Water Supply Project. Recall in 2023, this agency entered an outfall negotiation agreement with CalAm. This was the subject of the last agenda item. Since then, Monterey One Water has hired a major engineering firm to design the outfall improvements needed to facilitate the brine discharge. The improvements are detailed in my written staff report. There are three components that are most relevant for today's decision. First, the land portion of the outfall must be lined with a plastic sleeve to protect the pipe from the corrosive effects of brine. Second, at the shoreline, our contractor will need to access an existing junction structure so that divers can get inside the ocean portion of the outfall pipe and replace seals on the pipe joints. Third, at the very end of the ocean outfall, about 2 miles offshore, divers will need to access the diffuser section with boats to install multiple new diffusers that are angled upwards to better ensure the brine will be properly diluted. The primary state agency that regulates the ocean outfall is the Central Coast Regional Water Quality Control Board. 2025, the Board of Directors approved an application to the Central Coast Water Board for an amendment to our NPDES permit. That permit is in process now and scheduled to be considered for adoption by the Central Coast Water Board in August this year. Much of the outfall improvements are located within the coastal zone. So the next permit to apply for is an amendment to the original coastal development permit issued by the Coastal Commission in 1980. Monterey One Water has applied to Coastal Commission for amendments several times in the past, including for repairs to outfall damage caused by the 1989 Loma Prieta earthquake. Again, in 1992, when Marina Coast Water District was annexed into Monterey One Water service area. And again, notably in 1998 for installation of armor rock around the outfall. This may be stating the obvious, but the City of Marina and Marina Coast Water District are opposed to CalAm's Monterey Peninsula Water Supply Project. The City of Marina has asserted their position that Monterey One Water should submit the application for an amendment to the Coastal Commission permit to them, since the Coastal Commission certified their local coastal program in 1982. We have checked and double checked this with Coastal Commission staff and our legal counsel. Coastal Commission clearly retains jurisdiction for amendments to the coastal development permit for the ocean outfall. Coastal Commission staff has instructed us to submit the application directly to them. After they receive the application, Coastal Commission staff will in turn consult with the City of Marina to ensure the amendment will be consistent with Marina's local coastal program. As for the California Environmental Quality Act, submitting an application for a permit amendment is not a project that requires Monterey One Water to make a CEQA determination. In the environmental impact report for the Monterey Peninsula Water Supply Project, certified by the California Public Utilities Commission in 2018, the outfall improvements were specifically called for as a measure to mitigate the impact of the brine discharge. After we submit the application, we anticipate Coastal Commission will refer to that 2018 EIR to support its decision-making process. So our recommendation is for the recycled water to recommend the board authorize the executive officer to submit an application to the California Coastal Commission for an amendment to the coastal development permit for outfall improvements related to the Monterey Peninsula Water Supply Project. Consistent with the previous agenda item, Monterey One Water is the sole applicant listed in the application. This decision will have no fiscal impact on Monterey One Water. Per the 2023 agreement, CalAm will be paying the application filing fee and has been paying for the Monterey One Water staff time to support this effort. That's all I have for you. I'd be glad to answer questions.
Thank you, Matt. Director Moore?
Yes. So you've participated yourself in discussions with the California Coastal Commission staff on this?
Yes, sir.
Um, as no doubt you're aware, the pipeline crosses coastal zone property that is outside of the city's local coastal plan and then crosses property that is within the city's local coastal plan. Am I correct in that?
Correct.
And it's roughly 50-50, is it not? About half the distance is within the coastal zone, and then half of the distance is within Marina's local coastal plan. And I'm talking distance to the shore.
Yeah, it's about a 60% coastal zone, 40% city of Marina, local coastal.
Right.
Right.
Can you verify that the Coastal Commission staff is absolutely clear about that in making their assertion that they have sole complete authority even over the part that goes through the city's local coastal plan?
Yeah, when we met with Coastal Commission staff on December 18th, we presented some of the same exhibits that are shown in the application that's attached to this staff report, which showed the different jurisdictional areas.
Okay, I just wanted to be sure that some of this isn't a result of a miscommunication and the Coastal Commission staff thinking that it's all coastal zone and none of it goes within the city's certified by the Coastal Commission local coastal plan.
Understood.
Okay, thank you.
A quick comment. I appreciate Marina's letter and I understand their position they're in the city, but I think they need to take that up with the Coastal Commission. We're being told to submit it, let's submit it. And I think Marina needs to take their issues up with the Coastal Commission.
Great. Thank you, Ron. Chai, any public comments?
There are public comments here in person. If
Okay.
you want to step to the podium, please.
Great.
Good afternoon, board members. Howard Wilkins again with Remy Moose Manley on behalf of Marina Coast Water District. I'd like to address CEQA primarily. If I have any time left, I'll get to the Coastal Act, but it probably will not. I previously testified at the last committee hearing remotely about the Coastal Act and CEQA, and I'll just refer you to those comments in general. In reviewing the staff report, it says that the submittal of this application is not a project under CEQA, and it doesn't commit the agency to a definitive course of action, and therefore there's no requirement to do CEQA at this time. And I would suggest that that is not an accurate representation of CEQA's requirements. If you look at CEQA guidelines section 15352 subdivision B, it says with private projects, approval occurs upon the earliest commitment to issue or the issuance by the public agency of a discretionary contract, grant, subsidy, loan, or other form of financial assistance, lease, permit, license, certificate, or other entitlement to use of the project. And the idea that in this case, the agency hasn't committed to do anything with CalAm in terms of submitting this application, I think the record would not support that. And if you take a look at the Supreme Court's decision in Save Tara, I think a very similar argument was rejected in that matter. And because the court said in that case, on this theory, any development agreement, no matter how definitive or detailed, even if accompanied by substantial financial assistance from the agency and other strong indicators of agency commitment for a project, it would fall short of an approval so long as it leaves the final CEQA decision to agency's future discretion. And it rejected this argument that it's the first step under CEQA that you take that requires you to comply with CEQA, not the final action. And here, what I would suggest is you have an 80% design that you are submitting to the Coastal Commission for a coastal development permit. This project is far enough along that once you get an approval for that, you're not going to be able to go back and you're foreclosing alternatives. potentially foreclosing mitigation measures, as I indicated, that CalAm is apparently required to consent to any mitigation that the Coastal Commission or mitigation that you would be likely to require for the outfall. Remember, not all of the outfall, as you just heard, is within the coastal zone. You have the water board, that regional board that's looking at the implications of the brine from the waste discharge. You have the Coastal Commission looking at impacts within the coastal zone, but you're the only agency that has to look out for all of the impacts. This is not, if you're the sole applicant for the project, as is currently being proposed, it's not definitive yet, I guess, because the board hasn't decided. This is your project. And as I noted last time under CEQA, if this is your project, you are the lead agency. We've obviously argued this issue, and your staff and CalAm and your attorneys are all familiar that we argued this was part of the MPWSP in front of the Coastal Commission and in court. And the court, based on CalAm and the Coastal Commission's arguments, held that this was a separate project. This outfall lining was a separate project because it was being proposed by M1 Water. Assuming that's the case, you are required to do CEQA. And as I said, it's not the final approval of the project that requires you to do CEQA. Is my time up?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. You need to do it now. So anyway,
Okay.
with that, thank you.
Great. Thank you. Any other public comments?
And just bear with me one second, Chair. Chai, I believe, is pulling up. We have a quick presentation. Okay, DJ Moore again for California American Water. We appreciate staff's time in preparing the staff reports and responding to the questions raised at the last committee meeting. I'm just going to touch on a few quick topics. Next slide, please. As the staff report explains, M1W is not approving the proposed outfall modifications by submitting this application to the Commission. The CD application proposes the exact same outfall modifications you already asked the regional board to review when you voted to submit an updated ROWD application to the regional board last summer. By submitting the CDP application, M1W is not committing to modify the outfall. In contrast to what Mr. Wilkins said, this is not a contract like the Save Terra decision where an entitlement or money is involved. This is merely your request that another agency review the project for your benefit before you take any action to approve the project. Based on our discussions with your staff, we understand that M1W wants the Coastal Commission's analysis to occur before M1W considers a lease with CalAm or authorizes any changes to the outfall. That makes sense. So submitting this application ensures that that M1W will have the benefit of both the Commission's and the regional board's analysis before you take any action. Next slide, please. Once the application is submitted, the Coastal Commission's review process can begin. You all work for public agencies. You know how long the review process can take. The ROWD application has been pending before the regional board since October of 2024. So it's very important from a timing perspective to get this review underway. But an applicant submitting an application is not a project under CEQA because that application cannot impact the environment. The application only starts a review process, and a CEQA action is only required when an agency approves a project. And as I mentioned, M1W is not doing that now. Next slide. As detailed in the staff report, the Coastal Commission is the appropriate body to review this application. The proposal would amend the 1980 CDP, which includes a specific condition requiring any modifications to the outfall be considered through an amendment to the commission-approved permit. The fact that the city's LCP was certified in 1982 does not change the explicit language in that CDP. That condition would need to be amended to give the city jurisdiction. The outfall CDP, as your staff mentioned, has been amended numerous times. Outfall CDP has been amended numerous times since the LCP was certified, and each of those amendments has been processed by the Commission, including an amendment in 1992 when MCWD's service territory was incorporated into M1W's service area. Next slide, please. This is also consistent with the Commission's historic practice throughout the state. The Commission has repeatedly and consistently taken the position it maintains jurisdiction over future CDP amendments to commission-issued CDPs, even after an LCP is certified. I practiced in front of the commission for over 20 years. I have never seen a different position on a different matter.
Okay, you're out of
Am I out of
time.
time? Yeah, I'm sorry. I couldn't see the clock. But thank you very much. We appreciate it. And if you have any questions, we're certainly here to answer them. Thank you.
Great. Okay, I'd like to bring it back to the board.
Forgot where I was going to go with it.
Was there anyone online?
Discussion, and I'll jump back in.
Okay.
I'm sorry, was there anyone online who wanted to speak? I couldn't see from the.
Chai had said no, but is there
I didn't hear
anybody
that, sorry.
online?
Are there any members of the public who are joining us virtually that would like to speak? Please raise your virtual hand. I don't see any raised hand.
Okay. Sorry about that. Thank you.
Great. So, any last comments before we entertain the motion?
Did you have any thoughts?
Well, I've got, yeah, I've got concerns. Of course, they unfortunately relate more to 6F than to this. I'd like to be more, excuse me, 6E. I'd like to be more comfortable with 6E before making a decision on this myself.
Okay, so can we entertain a motion?
I'll just say that I hear your concerns, and unfortunately I missed the major part of the discussion on the last item. But given they're a little bit tied together, and I acknowledge you recognizing that. So kind of given that they're tied together, I think it makes sense for just organizationally for us to have this go forward in front of the board and have the board discuss it together collectively, and carry that conversation from there.
I'm in agreement with Director Williamson on that. So, motion. Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Great. We have first, second. Chai, roll call, please.
Veranda,
Yes.
Castroville,
Yes.
Marina Coast,
No.
Monterey.
Yes.
Motion carries 3-1.
Great. Thank you, Chai. I lost my place. Oh, yeah. Now we're moving on to staff reports.
The only staff report I have is you guys know that the weather is heating up unusually, and so CSIP is taking a whole lot of water. And hopefully in the next 2 weeks, by April 1st, we will get authorization from WRA to go ahead and use the Salinas River water, which will help out tremendously. So that's about the only update that I have.
Yeah.
Matt?
Amy, I got a question on that.
Sure.
Has Water Resources ever thought about trying to extend that permit so that they could start March 1st instead of April 1st?
Well, that's a good question. We could certainly bring it up. I know that Paul and Ara have been working together to send a letter out to the growers to basically say that, we've started the program with 20 wells. Now we're down to 8. 2 of them are actually not working for repairs, which leaves us 6. So we're running wells constantly right now with the weather and without the river water. And for them to maybe take in consideration their water orders between the hours of 7 and 2, which is when everybody's taking their water, and to spread that out. And Paul, I don't know if you have any additional comments on that since you were in those meetings.
Thanks, Tammy. So, Ron, although I don't know that they've seriously undertook any thought in sending a letter trying to change the dates, but I do know we discussed that at the last, I believe, leadership meeting of how many years ago did this April 1 thing start, which was the start of SRDF. And is there an opportunity to try to extend it, particularly with, as Tammy mentioned, the early heat that we've been seeing for a number of years and the demands exceeding 50 million gallons per day out in the CSIP area. So the subject was broached. I don't know if there's any serious movement towards it, but certainly I'll talk to Ara about it.
And I think they were still doing some maintenance and repair work, weren't they? That's what R had mentioned.
We will be ready to
Yes.
go April 1st, and
Okay.
we're just waiting for them to give the okay to
Okay.
go.
It-
Are you guys wrapped up at the dam?
We will be.
At least our aspect will be done, yes.
and then how how often are those wells running? Pretty much every day.
Every day, almost 100% of the time. I know that Jose's on, but yes, with the weather going, they're running pretty much 100% of the time because then they're used to backfill the pond to be ready for the next following day. So they're running hard and fast.
And Tammy, there's 8 wells, a couple of them are down. I think you actually have access to 5 right now, but Water Resources is actively working on at least a couple of them. So
Yes.
it's a tough spot to be in when it's that warm, demands are that high, and we have 16 million gallons coming in per day, and the demand's 50.
Yes, and keep in mind, as far as changing the date, the last 2 years with the flooding, the water was flowing too fast. So even though we were
Right.
ready to take water, we weren't able to until the rate slowed down enough for us to take. And I'm not sure what the rate is. I don't know if we could bring Jose on. Have you been paying attention to the flow, or maybe Daryl, as far as if, let's say tomorrow was April 1st, is it flowing too fast right now?
Yes.
So it's still flowing too fast. We wouldn't be able to take it if today was April 1st. So hopefully it will slow down enough for us to be in the window to take that water.
And the primary issue with the speed is just turbidity in the water into the system.
Correct.
Great. Thank you. Tammy, is there any other staff reports? No. Okay, let's move on to committee member comments or reports.
So thank you for a interesting and robust discussion of a couple of items today. Appreciate that. Also, I'd like to report, I got a report from staff that they have been paying attention to what's been going on in the news and the rising price of fuel, and have changed a little bit of their business practices and have been topping things off to try and keep our tanks full at the lowest possible rising prices. Unfortunately, I did hear a prediction from a colleague of mine at the Naval Postgraduate School who spent many years of his career as a logistician working for United States Transportation Command, particularly having to do with fuel to provide the military around the world. And he pointed out that California has special fuel that's only refined at a couple of refineries in India and a couple of refineries here in California. And the 2 refineries in California don't produce enough output to meet all of California's demand, so the rest of it's met by those refineries in India. And guess where they get their crude oil to refine from? Through the, not Venezuela, no, through the Venezuela, wise guy, through the Straits of Hormuz. So
It's not good news.
yeah. So at any rate, thank you for taking that on. Appreciate staff.
Great. Thank you. Anything else? Okay. Well, then meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kent.